So first of all, again, very good afternoon. Very happy to be with the Hong Kong audience again. As Claudius said, my name is Daniele Catteddu. I'm the global CTO at Cloud Security Alliance. I've been now with the organization for quite some time, 11 years, and prior to CSA, I was an officer at the ENISA, the European Cybersecurity Agency, where I had the pleasure to kick off the activities of the agency in the space of cloud security. That was really long time ago, 2008, a totally different environment for cloud. Cloud was, at its very beginning, and as soon as I felt that my mission within the agency was, getting to an end, I was glad to embark in this new project that Jim Reeves was starting at that point, which was the Cloud Security Alliance. And my chat with you today is going to be very much about the meaning of CSA, and I will give you an overview of what we are doing both in terms of research and in terms of other activities that we do, as so to make sure that you have a crystal clear understanding of what CSA does. Now, if we can move ahead with the slides. So CSA, as you all know, has always had a fundamental mission. That mission has been to provide guidance, support, and education to any company of any size and any individual, any stakeholder, essentially in the cloud ecosystem, that it will need some support and recommendation in the space of privacy and especially cybersecurity. The way we do that, it's very simple. We bring together the smartest people in this field and we put them to work together so that they can develop, based on a consensus approach, what are the best practices that the market needs. So we can define ourselves as a collective intelligence that operates for the common good. And this is not just like a simple sentence that I'm throwing out there, because I really mean that when CSA operates, it does it for the common good. And this is the reason why, for instance, as you all know, or most of you possibly, we decided that 99% of what we do is essentially free of charge. So whatever we do is on our website, and you can go and freely download it. We can move to the next slide. And one of the, the initial motto that Jim selected for us as a, guiding light for the operations of the organization has been that we need to find solution to tomorrow's problems. And this is done essentially in two ways. We try to provide guidance for today's challenges, but we also look for a solution for tomorrow's problem. And the reason why we do that is very simple. We all know that our industry, the cybersecurity industry, but in general, the information technology industry, is composed by many organizations with different level of maturity, different problems, and each one of them will need to be addressed on its own right. So from one side, we got companies that are beginning their cloud journey as we speak, or they have just started a few years ago their cloud journey, so they need that level of support towards the journey. And then we have also organizations which have been the first adopters of cloud computing back in the days, which by now have achieved a substantial level of maturity, but still they need to address some of the challenges of the evolution in the technological landscape. And that has to do, of course, with the evolution of the cloud as we know it. If we think about, the cloud at the very beginning, a rather simple approach, a clear-cut definition between the three main delivery models, SaaS, PaaS, and IaaS. As we proceed in the maturation of the cloud, we have seen that, that boundaries between, for instance, PaaS and IaaS has been blurring a bit. So with the introduction, for instance, of containers, and then, lately in the last few years with the concept of infrastructure as a code, that has brought us the opportunity to templatize the approach to cloud computing and create, template of our organization that are making the the automation that is so much required possible. If we can move to the next slide, please. Now, one of the objective of CSA has been to try to support organization at any stages of their cloud journey. It's funny because as I was selecting this picture and I had a consultation with our marketing team, our marketing VP told me, well, I don't think it's very appropriate that we are going to share to the audience the concept that their cloud journey might end up in a bags of bonds, which is not really the meaning of this picture. The meaning of this picture is really that our cloud journey and the cloud journey of any organization, you should start with a flower and end with a flower, regardless of what are the specific situation of that company. And that means that no matter what is your cloud journey, even if there are some failure and some issues along the way, all the data that you have been collecting along the way, they're going to be fundamental lesson learned that you can use for your next attempt. So this is to say that the way in which we operate is providing support at any stages of the cloud journey and helping you also in understanding when and where you might have got something wrong, so to be able to use those lessons to be better to the next round. Now, with that said, we can move on, please. Thank you very much. One of the other aspects of beautiness of Cloud Security Alliance is also that we don't do what we do in isolation. One of the things that we learned very early on in our journey was that we needed to be in close collaboration with all the other relevant stakeholders in the market, being them SDO, so Standard Development Organization, national agencies, other not-for-profit organizations such as CSA. And as you can see, I mean, this is just a small representation of all the many organizations CSA collaborates with. So we got ISO, and as you might know, CSA has a liaison category A with ISO SC27, which is the subcommittee that deals with information security, with SC38, which is the subcommittee that deals with cloud computing and distributed computing. We have also collaborations with IEEE, well, CIS, the IEC squared. We got vertical also in some specific areas. So for instance, in the banking sector, we have been working with FS-ISAC, with ABA, which is the European Banking Agency, with the NISA, my ex-employer, in US with DISA, with CISA, with the Department of Defense, with the Singaporean National Security Agency, and many others. And again, the spirit of this slide and in general of our approach in this sense is that no one can be so well. We need to collaborate with others. I mean that's an absolutely necessary, and the purpose has to be to try to find a common ground, common rules that can be then spread around across the overall ecosystem. If we can move to the next slide, please, and the next one as well. Now we are entering the phase in which we are going to discuss two of the main aspects of my presentation. So as I said, from the one side, we want to address issues of today and challenges and problems of today. And from the other side, we want to address problems for the future. When it comes to today's issue, most of the research that we have done, which is pretty extensive, we are looking at the work that is being produced by over 30 working groups. Each one of them has a different purpose and meaning. We have been covering essentially every single aspect of cloud computing, but not only, because we wanted to extend our scope also beyond cloud computing and to be able to make sure that we were connecting the dots with those emerging technologies, well, mobile and then big data back in the days, now in machine learning and artificial intelligence, blockchain, Internet of Things, industrial control system. So everything that we see out there as a minimum common denominator, which is really the underlying cloud infrastructure. And that's why we are trying to cover all these aspects. Now, just for your information, those are just few, highlights and numbers. We have over 600 downloadable research artifacts. That's a lot of information and a lot of guidance that each one of you can use in order to better guide their approach to cybersecurity and cloud security more and more precisely. Going back to the concept of the collective intelligence that I was referring to at the beginning, you might not be aware, but in the production of our best practices, over 9,500 researchers were involved. That's a lot. That's a lot of brain power that went into the definition of those best practices. And that gives also to you the opportunity to understand the depth and breadth of what we're doing. But also it's important for you to understand that whatever you are reading out of CSA, it really has a contribution of subject matter expert, and it has also that level of peer review that is coming from the overall community. Let's move to the next step. So one of the other aspects of us solving today's problem is certainly our STAR program. STAR is the acronym for security, transparency, and accountability. Now, as we know, and as I mentioned already, in the market we got companies with different level of technological maturity, different level of cloud understanding, different budget, different company culture. For instance, the European market is composed by 99% by small and medium companies. The same applies to the US market. In the Asia Pacific market, from what I know, the percentage of small and medium companies is about 97%, 98% specifically for the Hong Kong market. Now, these organizations, in most of the cases, they are lacking competencies, they are lacking budget, they are the ones that need the most help, but at the same time, they are the ones that are most in the need of leveraging cloud because of cost efficiency, because of the lack of internal resources for IT management, which makes for them cloud a perfect solution. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, we got organizations that, as I mentioned earlier, are very much mature. They have been early adopter, they are optimizing their cloud posture, they are moving from a small cloud footprint into like a substantial cloud usage. In many cases, we are looking at organizations that are completely cloud native and organizations that have, even large organizations, even in the financial sector, that have already moved to a cloud-first policy. Now, what they have in common, though, is that they need to address some very key and foundational questions. And those questions are essentially, well, how I can define trust in the cloud, how I can foster accountability, how I can evaluate risk, how I can measure assurance. And those, the creation of the STAR program has been really to try to address those questions and give an answer to those questions for the community. That has been the driver for us to create the STAR program. Now, did we get this perfect? Well, I don't think so. I wish I could say so, but STAR, as anything that is, humane, is not perfect. It's certainly, though, a very good program in order to foster security, transparency, assurance, risk management good practices, and accountability. And the fact that it's not a perfect program, it requires, in the spirit of what I mentioned before, that all of you are contributing to our effort to make it better. Now, let's though try to drill down more into the details of the STAR program and understand what are the fundamental pillars of our STAR program. The STAR program is essentially composed in five pillars. Pillar number one is the certification framework. Now, as you can see here, we have established what it goes under the name of Open Certification Framework. The Open Certification Framework is a fairly simple structure, 3 levels of assurance. We got level 1, a self-assessment, level 2, third-party certification, and then level 3, continuous auditing. The idea was really to, as I mentioned before, to try to offer solutions, attestation and certification solution that would provide an answer to different needs in terms of transparency and assurance. As we know, not all the organizations require the maximum level of assurance. The level of assurance that each company requires, it really depends on the risk profile, on the criticality of the service and data that they need to manage. And that's why we wanted to give this like a modular structure, so to address different needs at the same time. Now, by now, our certification framework has become the most widely adopted cloud-specific framework worldwide. And if we can move to the next slide. And this successful this success story is very well described by our public registry, the STAR registry. By now, we got over 2,000 organizations and services that are in our public registry. What the STAR registry is, for those of you that are not familiar with it, is a simple web page where we are listing. And what you can see here on the screen is just a few examples, but we are listing the security posture of many organizations. Essentially, what we do is we give the opportunity to companies to publish on our website the result of their assessment, being that a self-assessment or a third-party certification or attestation, so to give to anyone the opportunity to collect information that they can then use for their own risk assessment process. This is very simple. If you recall the early days of cloud, one of the main issues was lack of transparency. Many of the cloud service providers would say, well, do not worry, we guarantee you we're doing things properly. And in many cases, that was actually true. Except that, we run in a business where trust is very precious, and the idea of trust but verify is not new. It's not something that it was brought into the picture together with the concept of zero trust, for instance. So as we all know, and the title of this event and many presentations that it was provided, it touched upon the concept of zero trust and the importance of zero trust. But the concept of never trust, always verify has been there forever. The idea of evidence-based trust has always been there. So the point here with the STAR registry was really, well, let's give to companies the opportunity to cloud customers, the opportunity to go into a repository to see how different companies and different services are performing vis-a-vis a standardized approach in a way that you can measure apple to apple how you can how different of those different companies are performing, and so to be able to make an informed decision when it comes to the evaluation of a cloud services, both prior to acquiring the service and then during the execution of the service. And this point is very important, if I may highlight that, because some of the information that we got from our communities that one of the most common mistakes from many companies that they do an initial risk assessment of a solution. Sometimes it's very high level, but that's it. They don't continue that evaluation over the life cycle of the cloud solution, and this is extremely dangerous because risk, it has to be monitored over time, pretty much continuously. And again, this is to touch again over the concept of zero trust, which exemplify in their foundational principle very clearly this need of making sure that you are not assuming trust ever. Trust has to be evaluated over the course of time. Now, if we can move ahead. So the third pillar of the STAR program is the cloud control matrix. Now, for those of you that are not familiar with the cloud control matrix, that is the de facto standard for cloud security. We launched CCM about 11 years ago in 2011 to end of 2010, beginning of 2011. And the idea was, again, to support cloud service provider, customers, auditors, assurance provider, in building and improving their governance, risk, and compliance program. One of the beauty of the cloud control matrix is that it by now has become a sort of lingua franca, which is essentially that common language, that common vocabulary that can be spoken between the parties in order to understand each other. From one side, the cloud customer can use the CCM in order to map their own internal requirements to a best practice. From the other side, the cloud customer can measure and benchmark themselves based on the CCM controls. And those two aspects can be brought together in order for the CSP and the customer to have an open communication using the same language. One of the aspects that I'm going to touch upon in a second is also that CCM has been valued and adopted by governmental agencies, by regulators, national security programs. So again, by now we are sure that we are by far the most widely adopted cloud security standard worldwide. If we can move to the next slide, please. I mentioned three of the fundamental pillars of the STAR program. The fourth one is the need of having training and professional certification program. A couple of years ago, we launched the Certificate of Cloud Auditing Knowledge. This is an effort that we initiated with ISACA, or better said, we initiated this effort and then eventually ISACA came on board to help us with their expertise in the space of IT auditing. The idea of CCAK is to be that certificate that can help in understanding many of the aspects related to governance, risk, and compliance, and auditing clearly, that relates to the cloud ecosystem and to the STAR program in particular. I know that in the audience and between the organizers, there are some of the contributors. I would like to call out especially Rishi Leong, who is one of our CCAK trainers in the region, as well as one of the main contributors to the development of the CCAK. So thank you, Richie, for that. The beauty of and the importance of CCK, it's very simple to me. First of all, it's unique in its kind. There isn't any other program in the market that is able to provide guidance on how to assess and evaluate a cloud service, because that has been the point, right? So we have heard several times that with the advent of cloud, the role of many IT and security professionals was changing. And that is in fact true. The fact that we are not very often able to have hands-on in many of the machines and devices has forced professionals to be a smart procurer, to be the ones that rather than operating a system, they will need to evaluate that specific service, a specific service within before buying it. And that's why we wanted to give enough guidance, knowledge and expertise through this program. So for those of you that haven't yet approached the CCK, I would really highly recommend that you start doing that, because that is going to be one fundamental step for being a more mature procurer of cloud services. And then if we can move to the next slide, please. Now, the fifth pillar of cloud computing is the ecosystem of assurance and assurance providers and tools. Clearly, CSA couldn't do anything on its own. We needed an ecosystem of tools, both to enforce that process of evaluation, monitor, and continuous monitoring, but also the processes of auditing. And that's why, when we started, for instance, the STAR attestation and STAR certification programs, we wanted to make sure that we were partnering with the most reputable auditing companies in the market. And as you can see in the screen, all the logos that you see there represented are our representation of the most important and well-known assurance provider in the space. I'm not going to mention specifically any of them, but I'm sure that you can recognize their logo. And the reason why we wanted to do that is very simple, because if you're operating a compliance framework, a governance, risk and compliance framework, the quality and the reputation of the auditor is paramount. You can have an impressive certification scheme, a very good standard for security, but without the proper skills and expertise when it comes to auditing and evaluation and assessment, it becomes extremely difficult to have any sort of result that can be believed can be of value. If we move to the next slide, please. Now, I mentioned that a few minutes ago. By now, the STAR program has received appreciation at many levels, both from national security agencies, but also from other operators in the space. You can see a few logo there. So I don't know if you're aware of the fact that at the beginning of this year, the Italian National Security Agencies has decided to use the STAR program and the CCM as reference for the selection of cloud vendors for the Italian public administration. And this is not uncommon, because in my recent trip, during summer in Israel during Security Week, we had the same request from the National Cyber Directorate in Israel. And that has been something that has been going on also in other countries. Like, for instance, recently, Saudi Arabia decided to make mandatory the adoption of the STAR certification for the selection of national of services for the national for the public sector. We have had collaboration with FedRAMP. We are having collaboration with the Cybersecurity Agency of Singapore. But not only at national level, we are also participating and working with vertical sector, like, for instance, in the banking sector, the entertainment industry, in order to create vertical customization of our STAR program, so to be able to address the specific needs of different business sectors. Now, the reason why we do that is pretty clear, right? While we are all aware of the fact that by using CCM, or for instance, you can cover up to 90% of all the cybersecurity requirements in the national criteria. There is always, or the sectoral criteria, there is always that big, that small difference, that small gap that is typical of the needs and the requirements of a specific country or of a specific business sector. And we want to operate in that space. So we want to make sure that at the end of this journey, which hopefully is never going to end, we are going to provide users with a program that is able to offer solution regardless of the business sector in which you operate, regardless of the country in which you're operating, and regardless of your level of maturity and criticality. We can move to the next one, please. And the next. So we discuss about what we are doing today to address today's problem. But then how the world is going to look like in 2030. So what CSA, in the spirit of its mission, is doing in order to address tomorrow's problems. And in this space, as I mentioned, that there are loads of activities that we have initiated. Of course, industry collaboration, which is a journey that is never going to happen. The expansion of our ecosystem, so to better address some of these newer technologies, if we can call containers newer, but certainly serverless, and then infrastructure as a code, so function and configurations. So the idea that we're going to drive through our best practices, or with the support of our best practices, the evolution of the cloud journey in that area of automation that is very much required. Given the amount of devices that are out there, the level of complexity of the current organizational structures, with many or most of our employees working remotely, there is a need to enforce security practices that are automated. Again, the idea of zero trust, which is one of the other areas in which CSA it's betting a lot and is putting a lot of investments through, for instance, the creation of an advanced center for zero trust, is exactly that. Try to provide guidance in those areas where there is still confusion, and by experience we know that it will take years before we can get to a sufficient level of maturity. Again, I want to touch upon the concept of zero trust for one reason, because now it suddenly became a sort of buzzword. The title of this conference, it goes in that direction, doesn't it? It's zero trust became the hot topic of the day, except that despite the fact that there are several good vendors there that are contributing to offering solutions, the problem is that that zero trust is not really a technological problem. It's very much about mindset. So that means that before we can change that mindset, it will take time. It will take years. And CSA is going to be there to drive that transition between the old moth and castle approach towards a proper zero trust approach. But then again, we want to make sure that we are entering also in spaces like and solving solutions that are present today, but that are projected to be even a bigger issues and challenges in the future, like for instance, supply chain risk. On that side, we have recently launched a project called Global Security Database, which is meant to be a modern way in which we collect and define vulnerabilities. We all of us that has been in the security space long enough is very well familiar with the idea with the MITRE CVs. Now, they are a wonderful project, except that there are some limitations. Now, we want to build on those limitations, and that is what the global security database is going to be all about. But then again, there are other areas where there are still not so well known, or certainly not widely adopted, like confidential computing, which is another space where CSA is working and is going to work even more. And then, of course, quantum, blockchain, edge, and IoT. Now, this is just a very highlight of what we are working for the future in the space of research. If we move to the next slide, the other big area where we are operating is the space of the future of education. Now, it doesn't make any sense for me to repeat what we all know. Our market is suffering from a problem of lack of expertise. Is lacking of a problem of the challenge. It's suffering the challenge or the problem of being understaffed, missing resources. So from one side, we are lacking resources. From the other side, in my opinion, we are also failing in having a proper path to guarantee to our present and future expert and practitioner the right level of education. And even worse, I don't think we are able to properly measure the level of competencies and skills that our practitioner have. Many of you, I guess, or all of you, own some cybersecurity certificate or certifications. You know that in many cases you need to maintain those certifications over time with the CPEs, but we also know that the CPE model is very much presence-based. So you can attend a conference, you can pretend you're listening, but not necessarily sometimes you are. They are not performance-based. So we don't know exactly if that specific individual is really getting that level of technical advancement or competencies advancement that is very much required. So the project, from one side, CSA is willing to keep on pushing out new educational products. And for your information, we started to release since August of this year a series of micro trainings that are going to cover different aspects of cloud security. Those micro trainings are meant to be sort of adds-on to our CCSK, the Certificate of Cloud Security Knowledge. The reason why we do that is very simple. We know that CCSK, it's a phenomenal good security cloud foundation, but then we want to plug in additional pieces of training so that we can keep on raising the bar and making sure that the individuals can really improve their expertise in any specific areas. Because frankly speaking, defining yourself as a cybersecurity expert, it doesn't in many cases make any sense. Each one of us has its own area of expertise. There are people that are more advanced in the identity and access management, other in security, in secure networking, other in governance, risk and compliance. Not necessarily each individual knows everything about everything. No one can be an expert of everything. So it is going to be fundamental for us to identify who is expert in what specific sector, removing the generic label of cybersecurity expert, but being a security expert in zero trust or in identity and access management or in networking. And the project I actually recently initiated is going to be really much looking into the future of training and professional accreditation. So what is going to be the right balance between theoretical knowledge and practical knowledge? What is the relationship between university degrees and certification, and so on and so forth? Now, before I end my presentation, I would like also to mention, as I referred several times to the concept of zero trust. Something that you need to be aware of is that with my team, we are working to a zero trust training curriculum. The curriculum has been published yesterday, so you can go on our website and look at what is going to be the structure of the future CSA curriculum. We are going to cover 8 different areas, which pretty much align with the main pillars and critical areas of zero trust. And with the projection with the timeline of summer of next year, we are going also to launch a new certificate on zero trust security knowledge. The series of training is going to be released starting from the end of this month. Actually, in a couple of weeks, you will see popping up the first of the modules of our Zero Trust training series, which is going to be a training module of a couple of hours around Zero Trust architecture. Again, the idea is to, remove that level of unclarity and lack of understanding and confusion that there is around Zero Trust. Remove the vendor parlance, if you like, and trying to push out to the market something that is genuinely technologically independent and vendor neutral. I really hope you are going to enjoy the result of the effort that we are putting in the space of zero trust, and in general all the trainings that we are working on, because education is going to be fundamental. And the more we are able to consume those pieces of education, the more we are able to provide evidence of our knowledge and expertise, the better our market is going to be. And with that said, if there is still time, I'm more than happy to get some questions if there are any.